Okay, and I think we've got most folks in here now. So hello and welcome to the Georgian Fahey Center for Healthcare Innovation 2022-23 Patient and Public Engagement Lunchtime Learning Series. For this session, we will be learning about the development of a provincial patient and family advisor network with some folks from Shared Health and a patient advisor. I'll introduce them shortly, but I just want to start off with some housekeeping for everyone. So we will have time for a discussion at the end, but if you have questions as we go, feel free to pop those into the chat. I'll be monitoring for our presenters. To use the chat box, select the chat button at the bottom of your screen and enter your text where it says type message here. You can send messages to everyone in the meeting or to specific people, such as myself, using the drop-down menu above where you type your message. If you have any trouble with Zoom, please feel free to message me and I'll try and help you out. We do have auto transcription enabled, so you should see closed captioning for the session. You can toggle this on or off using the subtitles button, I think it is still called, at the bottom of your screen, or captions button. If you'd like to receive credit for your attendance, make sure your full name is shown. You can rename yourself by right-clicking on where your video is or where your video would be, and selecting rename, or by clicking the participants button, selecting your name, hovering over it and choosing more, and you also have the option to rename yourself. The series is accredited by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada as a group learning activity, and it may be eligible for credits towards requirements of other professional bodies such as College of Pharmacists in Manitoba and the College of Registered Nurses in Manitoba, but check with those organizations to make sure. And I think that's everything for housekeeping. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We have joining us Colleen Schneider. If you want to give us a wave there, Colleen. Hi,
Hello.
Colleen is the Shared Health Provincial Lead for Engagement. She's a city planner who has worked in community development, nonprofit housing, child welfare, and for over 20 years in healthcare engaging patients, families, and the public. Her current work involves supporting provincial work to disrupt and dismantle racism in Manitoba's healthcare system. Welcome, Colleen. We also have Susie McLeod. Hi, Susie.
Hi, everyone.
Susie is the patient engagement consultant for Shared Health. She has worked in healthcare for 27 years in long-term care, acute care, and in community health in the area of volunteer and community engagement. She has been in her current position since November 2021, engaging patients, families, and the public. And our patient advisor, Paula Orecklin. Hi, Paula. Paula is a member of the Patient and Family Advisor Network and Advisory Committee with Shared Health, as well as CHI's Patient and Public Engagement Collaborative Partnership, and a patient advisor with various organizations, including Healthcare Excellence Canada, Patient Advisor Network, and Health Technology Assessment International. Paula recently completed In Health Associates Foundations in Patient Leadership Program and is a co-author of the winning Best Poster at the 2022 Health Technology Assessment International annual meeting. So welcome everyone, and now I will turn it over to our presenters.
Great. Okay.
Okay, just having some troubles moving the screen. There we go.
You might have a bit of lag.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay.
Great. So I'd like to do the acknowledgement to get us started. Health services across Manitoba are provided in facilities located on the original lands of First Nations, Inuit, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Manitoba health authorities respect that First Nations treaties were made on these territories, acknowledge harms and mistakes, and we dedicate ourselves to collaborate in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in the spirit of reconciliation. And what we're our objectives for the session today in sharing the story of the development of our Provincial Patient and Family Advisor Network are to, I've got my notes on the side, just a second. That sort of by the end of this, that you should maybe get an idea about sort of steps in a collaborative and engaging planning process, because we feel like this one was collaborative and engaging. You should be able to sort of have a better understanding of some current and future engagement initiatives that are happening within healthcare in Manitoba, and be able to use the services of our Shared Health Patient and Family Advisor Network. And I think we have a poll that should be coming up on your screen now. Here we go. So please let us know, just get a sense of people's experience engaging. And I guess it could also be using engagement input. I would say if you're doing that ongoing, you might not be facilitating, but I think for sure that if you're doing that in a major way, then for sure you can indicate that here. So I think we've got 30 folks participating. So just watching the numbers go up here a little bit. And then we'll see when things kind of taper off. It looks like we got a lot of folks that have quite a bit of experience in engagement. Are you sharing the results now? I'm not sure because
Yeah.
everybody can see them. Okay, yeah, so that's great. So thanks for participating. It looks like almost 70% of folks have somewhat or greater experience in engagement. So that's really helpful to know. So this won't be new to you, and for others, hopefully you'll get a chance to learn a little bit and how to use advisors in your work. And I guess that's it. And I think I turn it over to Susie now. Thanks.
I think we got one more slide for you, Colleen.
Oh, I have more. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Susie tells me what to do. It's awesome. So good.
But I am trying to move the slide along, and I don't know if it's lagging again, Trish. So there we go.
Oh,
Okay.
right. Yeah. So just to give you a bit of a background on our program. So this is new. Shared Health, of course, is a newer organization. And I joined Shared Health from the Winnipeg region in January 2021. And Susie joined, she said, in November that year. The purpose of our team is to integrate patient voice in planning and quality improvement initiatives. Some of the work that we're doing, our focus is on provincial clinical teams, including projects. So we do sort of support engagement into ongoing planning and also specific projects related to those teams. We have advisors working on quality improvement and targeted practice improvement work. I don't think we've done this yet, but Choosing Wisely and Manitoba's Idea Fund for Health, there are within our scope of work that we can do and might be looking more to this in the future. We also support engagement into provincial initiatives like Disrupting Racism, which I'll talk more about later. It could be one of the other things that we worked on is the Diabetes Action Plan, which we're waiting to hear what's going to be happening with that. So there are some provincial initiatives where we support the engagement component of that work and work around the provincial quality and patient safety strategy. So we, with all this work, we needed to come up with a way to have an ongoing group of advisors who we could call upon to advise. We also do targeted recruitment, so we don't just use our advisors, but depending on what we're doing, we may be doing some additional recruitment through the service delivery organizations, through healthcare partners, health sites, clinical leads, etc. So, but we definitely wanted to have a core group that we could go to, and Susie has really led this work, and she and Paula will be sort of telling the story of how this came about. So I think I'll turn it over to Susie now.
Great, thanks, Colleen. And so with the need that we needed to create a pool of patient and family advisors, that was my main purpose when I was hired. And some of the things that we needed to consider was that the pool of advisors needed to be provincial in nature due to the scope and the mandate of our organization. We knew that it needed to be part of Shared Health, but not a freestanding provincial organization. And so we needed to look at how does that support our service delivery organizations, which we abbreviate as SDOs. And for those of you outside of our province, a service delivery organization is primarily our regional health authorities. We have 5 regional health authorities, but we also have a few other service delivery organizations that are provincial organizations like Cancer Care Manitoba. So there's about 6 or 7, I think, service delivery organizations in total that we support. but also needed to look at other health organizations that are not part of shared health and how this network could potentially assist those organizations. We wanted to collaborate with patient and family members and other engagement staff within our province to explore how this would look like. It was important for us that we made no other assumptions in creating this network and that we really collaborated with others in its development. And so before we talk about how our network was formed, I just want to share a little general information about what is collaboration. And as you can see on the screen, the definition that I've used here is it's a process of two or more people or entities or organizations working together to complete a task or to achieve a goal. And it's really about a common purpose that everyone is coming together. I like the image that's there because you can see, even though there's only 4 pieces of the puzzle, every person around the table brings their unique skills, their knowledge, their expertise. It could be some resources, but whatever they are bringing to the table is going to assist in the vested interest or outcome and that common goal that they're working towards. So in terms of some of the steps that we followed, or in terms of our collaboration process, the first one is getting started. And this is kind of where you need to gather information and look at those first planning steps. For us, before we could collaborate, we needed to do some research. And that's what I did, is I did a scan of what was occurring elsewhere. I needed to have a better understanding of the landscape of engagement in healthcare, so to speak, and what people were doing. So you can see I reached out to a variety of health authorities across Canada, as well as 2 other networks that were already in place, the BC Patient Voices Network and the Patient Advisors Network. Also during this step, we also need to identify any stakeholders who would be interested in that common goal. And depending on what you're collaborating on, this could include leadership, executive staff, decision makers, or funders, community groups. For us, it was our patient and family advisors that we wanted to engage in this collaborative process, as well as our provincial engagement community of practice group. And for us here in Manitoba, this group is comprised of healthcare engagement staff throughout our province. It includes engagement staff on the service delivery, as well as the research side of healthcare. And lastly, in this step, it's important to identify any resources that are needed, in particular if there's a budget that's needed to accomplish your goal. The next step is mobilizing your team, and how will this team operate? So you need to start to think about things like communication, decision-making and reporting processes, such as whether consensus or majority decision-making styles will be used, or if the team is making recommendations for someone else to approve. You need to consider logistical considerations. So think about accommodations needed in order for people to participate, or the timing of when your meetings might take place. If you're meeting in person, whether travel, accommodations, or food is required. And if you're meeting virtually, what are those technical requirements so that everyone can participate? In our situation, we actually organized ourselves with creating 2 working groups. We had one that was comprised of patient and family advisors, and then we had a second working group that was comprised of engagement staff within our province. And what we did is we made sure that 2 of the advisors on the patient and family group actually attended the meetings of the staff working group to provide continuity between the 2 groups. And we did that because the patient and family advisor group met in the evenings, because we did have people on that group that were working full-time or were students. And so their availability was primarily in the evening, whereas our staff availability was during the day. So that's kind of the main reason why we had the 2 working groups. And then it was my responsibility to make sure that those 2 working groups were communicating and coordinated together. Once we mobilized the team, then what you need to do is set direction. So that things like so this would consist of things like needs to be developed in partnership with everybody. So you need to agree on what your mandate or your purpose is towards that common goal, what deliverables and timelines that you will work from. And from this, a terms of reference is created. And so what I had done is I had drafted a terms of reference, but I brought it to each of those working groups and asked for them for their input. And that's kind of what we did at the first meeting is we picked it apart and until we agreed upon the wording. And so it was really a collaborative process to ensure that we all had the same vision, which we knew was to create some type of network where patient and family advisors can be accessed. So for us, so the next step would be for taking action, which is completing the mandate. So this is where you need to have constant communication, having someone that can ensure everyone's participating actively, following up with people if they're not at meetings, getting their inputs, outside of the meeting was really crucial for us, and address any barriers if there are any in order to ensure that we can move that work forward. And then the last step is to reflect on the work that's been done, and as any changes are needed as we're going through that process, and of course recognizing the contributions and celebrate successes. So for us, in the terms of the development of our network, these were kind of what you see, these bullets here are kind of the goals from our terms of reference that I pulled out to share with you. So our working groups had the responsibility of proposing the terminology or the name of our network. They needed to propose recommendations of how the network would be integrated with existing service delivery organizations or other healthcare partner organizations. We had to propose and develop a process to sign up or the intake of advisors. We had to also do the same for what the process would look like for those service delivery organizations or partners to access our network. We had to propose processes around compensation of advisors, develop evaluation and feedback forms, both for staff and the advisors, and start to identify orientation and training materials needed for both staff and advisors when engaging or being engaged in opportunities. So we had a real large task in front of us. And so before we go into breaking down some of these pieces, we were very ambitious. We started meeting in December of 2021, and I think our final meeting was September of 2022. And so our final product, which is launching our network, which consists of being posted on our Shared Health website, took place in January 2023. So it took us a full year and a bit to get to where we are today. And Paula and I will share some of those highlights and talk about the things that we did and how we engaged our patients and families to come up with some of these things, these processes as part of our network. And so the first thing is we want to share with you is what's in a name. So how did we come up with the name that we are using, Patient and Family Advisor Network? And we spent a lot of time discussing in terms of what our network should be called. Patient partner seems like a very more commonly used word in our field, especially on the research side. But our working group had really honest and frank discussions as to whether our organization is ready to engage at a partner level. We didn't want to be misleading or set expectations that we would not be able to meet. And because Shared Health is a new organization in our province, it was best for us to use the term advisor, as it accurately reflects how they are being engaged with our organization at this time. We also defined the words patient and family in that it encompasses clients, persons with lived experience, residents, consumers of healthcare, caregivers, and the public interested in health. In the end, we landed with Shared Health's Patient and Family Advisor Network. And I also just want to have Paula join in now because she'll share a few items about her experiences when it came to naming our network. Paula?
Thanks. There's so many different considerations that we brought up in naming the network. We had to distinguish ourselves from all of the other patient engagement networks, but still make it clear what we're about. I recommended that whatever we use for a name, we pick something with an acronym that's easy to say. Originally, we'd settled on Patient and Family Advisor Network of Manitoba, or PFANMB. Easy enough to say, right? However, then Shared Health Communications decided that since it's part of their organization, we don't need to use the word Manitoba, but instead need to, or will use Shared Health's Patient and Family Advisor Network. I personally still question if people will actually refer to it by its full name, but hey, that's part of the creation process, right? Not everything everyone suggests is going to be used, especially when the input doesn't just come from our working group, but from the organization itself, Shared Health. The final decisions were made by Shared Health Communications. I will add one suggestion that I did really insist on, which is that we had to make sure if the name or one very similar like it is not already on an existing web presence. Not just so we're able to be found, but also to be sure that we're not a keystroke or two away from something potentially very unprofessional.
Great. Thanks, Paula, for sharing. So the next couple of slides, Paula and I will speak about some of the process specifically in terms of the intake for our advisors. And the next 3 slides depict our very lengthy flow chart that we created. And I apologize in advance that it may be difficult to read, but these slides will be made available to all attendees after the session. And so, yeah, we'll walk you through some of the highlights of kind of the processes that we identified and recommended. And so just to have a bit of an explanation there, we have a legend in the top corner here. The diamond shape items are shapes are process steps, so which indicate the start of a process or the end of a process. And the rectangular shapes are process steps down the middle. And on the right-hand side, it's an explanation of what that process step includes or entails. And on the left-hand side is a rectangular shape with a bit of a angled corner, which references all the documents or forms that are required in order to perform that process step. So Paul and I will talk a little bit about the expression of interest form, which was our first step. And this is where we spent quite a bit of time again on, what should we be asking patient and family advisors? What do we need to know about them in order for them to register on our network? So what questions do we need to ask? How should the questions be worded? We looked at, language and making sure it was very simple language that was being used. What order should they appear on the form? What questions could be asked at a later date. So in the end, we did create an expression of interest form, and our final version is on our website, which we'll be able to show you kind of a little bit at the end or later at the end of the session. Paula, do you want to share your comments about your experience with developing this form?
Yeah. So we felt that we needed a fair bit of information from aspiring members, but we had a lot of discussion about what should be on the intake form versus what should be on the intake interview that every new person will have with Susie. Plenty of things were moved from the form to the interview so as to not scare off anyone by a long form, but also so proper nuance can be appreciated and understood. We're talking about very delicate and private things in some cases for people's backgrounds. For example, one thing we wanted to know was about the skills potential patient partner has we wanted to know about their skills they have, This includes the soft skills like working with a committee or along with any experience they've already had with patient engagement. We considered having tick boxes for things like having an understanding of medical terminology, but what does that even mean? Does it mean you have a hepatic disease and not just a liver one? Or does it mean you can read a medical chart or a study without needing to Google any medical acronyms? Instead, we decided a more detailed discussion with Susie would be a far better way to get to know a prospective member. We ask on the form if accommodations are necessary because, people may need accommodations to fill out the form. But in the interview, they're then asked if they require accommodations again, but also any extra support or compensation. For example, Do they need to cover transportation, childcare, or respite costs? A better, more personal way of eliciting the information is in a meeting with Susie.
Thanks, Paula. The next step of screening, we wanted our network to be inclusive, and no matter what their experience is or was with the healthcare system, whether it's positive or negative, that their opinion and their healthcare experience matters. And so we heard from the working groups that we shouldn't call it an interview, as it may be intimidating, but rather a meet and greet. As all of our interactions with our advisors currently are over the phone or virtually, I refer to it as a conversation. This is where I share more information about the network and learn more about their healthcare experiences. The main thing we want to screen for is to determine if they are at a place in the healthcare journey or in their healthcare journey where they can use their experience constructively for the larger good. If they are currently dealing with an issue, they may need to be referred to patient relations, which is separate from our department. And once it's resolved, it may be a better time for them to join. Or if their healthcare experience is triggering, we want to be aware of that. We want to ensure that we are practicing trauma-informed engagement. Paula, I think you have more to share about your experience with screening.
Well, once in the network, we want to make sure that the patient partners have a good experience. This means Susie will get in touch with members to see how their experience of working on a particular opportunity will go. Being able to come to a supportive, understanding professional when we have questions or concerns is really important. It's also important that the network, as well as people running a specific project that the patient is working on, close the loop by coming back to the patient. You can't just use us. You have to provide information about how the project went. We want to make sure that the patients know that they're safe space to come back to. And the screening, we were talking about if we need to have background checks. So thank you, Carrie. We wanted to know if they need background checks. So one of the things we're concerned about, though, is, well, okay, and by the way, these checks will be done when someone is assigned to a project that will have a level of, I guess, potential risk, I should say, or more sensitive, working with patients and rather than just being in a committee meeting with other patient partners, for example. They have but the thing with the background checks is we're going to only ask for this once. But then what happens if 6 years later or something, the person, say, commits a crime, but we aren't aware of that. So there's that's a particular issue that we really had a lot to talk about.
So our next slide continues that flow chart. And you can see that we also looked at orientation and training and what that would consist of. We did a lot of brainstorming with both working groups in terms of a list of orientation topics and training topics that our advisors should be trained on. And so some of them are in place already. They're procedures or training that our organization has, and others are still in development. Once a person is placed as an advisor, we also have listed all of the steps here, which again, for sake of time, I don't have time to go through every single process step, but you'll see on the next slide here, we talk about the final two steps, evaluation and retention. And in evaluation, we looked at what feedback we wanted from the advisor perspective when they're recently matched to an opportunity, but as well as at the completion of the engagement opportunity. And we replicated that process for the staff as well when they're engaging advisors. So they are also being asked for their feedback and input on those advisors, just shortly after they've been placed with their project, but also at the end. And we looked at the evaluation tool that was created by McMaster's University, the Public Patient Engagement Evaluation Tool. and we customized it to our program. And so what Paula was saying earlier is that, it was really important for us to make sure we close that loop. And Paula, if you are ready, you can share
Yes.
any more on that.
Yes, I apologize. So like I said, that getting in touch with patients to know how their experience it was is extremely important, because we often provide extremely personal, detailed information about our lives, often talking about the worst experiences that we've ever had sometimes. That means that at the very, very least, we deserve to have someone come back to us and tell us how our information was used. You have to close the loop. You can't just use us and then drop us. It's just not fair to us. At the very least, you have to come back to us and tell us how this information is used. I know that personally, the whole reason I'm a patient partner is so that the severe chronic pain I've had for the past 22 years isn't just pointless suffering, but is actually made into something constructive. And that means I want to know what that constructive use is. It's only fair. I know a lot of other patient partners feel the same. We deserve to know where our input has been used.
Thanks, Paula. Our group also looked at some retention strategies in terms of how to retain our advisors on our network, because what's important to realize is this network is comprised of individual patient and family advisors. They don't meet as a large group like an advisory council or committee. And so they're individual members on our network. And it's our role to make sure that they're engaged and kept aware of resources and services and opportunities. And depending on their interests, their availability, and a number of other things, they will be matched to opportunities, engagement opportunities throughout their time on our network. So talked about retention strategies. And then the last final step of this intake process is when an advisor chooses to leave or is asked to leave, depending on the situation. But we talked about what those steps or processes would look like as well. So moving along, in terms of sharing some of the challenges that we faced, the first one challenge is just having unrealistic timelines to accomplish our deliverables. And so when I look back at that terms of reference that the group, decided on, I think we gave ourselves, 6 months as kind of we'll meet for 6 months, we'll have all of this, set out. And obviously that was very unrealistic. And I think Paula's nodding because I think she was vocal at that point saying, this is not going to get done in 6 months. And so she was she was right on that. But some of our deliverables, because the reason why some of our deliverables were delayed is because they involved or they were dependent on other departments. So they were out of our control. So for example, our communications department, so they're the ones setting up the website. And so we had to work around their priorities and their timelines. So things like that put a little bit of a hurdle. But eventually, like I said, in January of 2023, just a couple of months ago, we finally launched it on our website. And what Colleen kind of mentioned earlier, we realized really early on in our planning discussions that within the first probably couple of meetings, it was made quite clear that even though we set up this network, there will always be a need for targeted recruitment based on the engagement requests that we receive. So when the staff submit, they are looking for a very specific group of patients, family members, people with lived experience, but also to ensure that there's diversity. Because what was quite clear is, our primary intake process is through our website, and the demographic or population that would be accessing our website would be people who know how to operate a website and who are, actively seeking out this type of opportunity. And most people, and I don't want to generalize, but we're finding that there will be retirees, female, Caucasian. And so we want to make sure that we're expanding our reach and ensuring that our network is really diverse and represents Manitoba's population. So that is a challenge that was noticed right from the beginning when we planned this, and we're working towards that as our network grows. So now I'm going to turn this over to Paula. She's going to share some firsthand perspective overall with her opportunity or her experience with us.
Thank you. I love this opportunity to create an entirely new organization from scratch. For one thing, its existence is necessary for the province if it wants to make use of the centuries of lived experience that the healthcare system that we patient partners collectively carry around in our heads, in our bodies. It's practical to have a single network providing all of the service delivery, organization, and engagement opportunities in the province, so no one misses out on the chance to improve the system on the patient side. And so the professionals offering the opportunities don't miss out on working with patients who have this wealth of experience. Personally, the chance to create a whole new network meant a lot. It means, if not permanent change, at least change with some chance of longevity. Most of the things I've been able to do as a patient partner are individual projects with existing networks. Here was the chance to create one from scratch. It's the difference between using a vase, no matter how much you love it, and fill it with new flowers, and but the difference between actively sculpting it, if it isn't so hokey that I would kind of want to bury my head from embarrassment, but it's that kind of that opportunity to have our hands on it, that opportunity to be able to make something new. I love the opportunity to collaborate with the other members of the working group too. I've always personally enjoyed the back and forth discussion process of committee work and hearing all the points of view. And I think we ended up with everyone more or less agreeing that this finished product is a good one. Susie's always great to work with and kindly accept my many suggestions over the course of the year it took. I certainly took the opportunity to bring up as many positive things I've seen in other networks as I could think of, as well as anything I can dream up myself. So one of the things I advocated for was not just the listing of preferred areas where patient partners want to work in the network database, but also listing any areas where they don't want to work. Personally, there are some medical specialties I'm just not comfortable working with, and many people have triggers relating to their experiences in healthcare. No one should get triggering emails in their inbox asking if they want to work on a project. No one should be harmed by this. I'm pretty confident that I ended up commenting on pretty much everything we talked about. But what I liked the most was when we went through all of these decisions about things I normally never think about. For example, should we have name tags or not? Personally, I actually said yes, because what it does is it reinforces the idea that we're experts with lived experience and that shared health recognizes us as such. That'll only be if we do things in person, though, of course. Or do we need to have the training courses on hygiene and hand washing? Well, hey, why not? I mean, it's required for staff, and it's certainly relevant to keeping ourselves, the professionals, and other patient partners clean, safe, especially since this discussion happened during Code Red last year, COVID. Another point of view was the background screening, as I mentioned a little earlier. If we have a screening, like, what's that meant to protect? It's meant to generally protect patients, right? But we're patients. No one really thinks about our safety in this respect. We ended up not having it really be a big deal because it was a bunch of virtual meetings. We never met in person. But other than that, that if we were in person, then maybe that is something we should think about. It's just, there's a lot of different things that I would have never thought about if not for the network design. We also, at my very continual insistence, so more than that, social benefits like EI and disability may be impacted by receiving honorariums. Seriously, I'm going to be very highly recommending anyone watching this who works with patient partners or anyone else who gets any social benefits, tell them that and that they need to speak to their caseworker for details. Don't let other patient partners end up in debt to the province like I am. It's a bit of a side note, but if you're going to create a network, it has to be one that will not actively harm its members. More positively, it's also important to let advisors know that the network can provide benefits like recommendation letters. And these don't have to just be for school, but things like housing programs even take recommendation letters. And that's something you have to actively tell people too, because they don't normally think of this thing on their own. You have to try to come up with as many ways to help your volunteers and engage with them but also to recognize their worth. And overall, it was just a really fascinating process to go through to end up with a full-fledged network. I don't actually even want to know how many pages of suggestions I ended up sending Susie, but she was very kind about receiving them all. Um, I learned so many different things in the course of this. And I've been able to use the experience in other situations, including discussions with CHI's own patient and public engagement collaborative partnership, of which I'm also a member. And also during a larger project embedding the patient perspective in the entirety of Healthcare Excellence Canada's organization. One of the most illuminating discussions was about patient partner compensation. We discussed the various provincial models for payment, along with some mention of international comparisons. I'm disappointed that the existing split, where engaging with service delivery organizations will continue to be primarily unpaid, while research offers honorariums will continue, but I understand the financial reality of it, especially after the massive hit that COVID's given us. Research projects also embed patient compensation into their budget, which isn't the case for some healthcare delivery organizations. Honestly, I can just hope that we end up being as successful as CHI's Patient and Public Engagement Collaborative Partnership. If anyone watching this is starting to think about joining, please reach out and fill one of the forms out. The healthcare system has finally realized our worth. We understand the pitfalls of the system better than anyone. Now here we can start fixing them, or at least ensure there's some good fencing around it and some warning signs.
Thanks, Paula, for sharing that. I'm just going to go back and share our screen with everyone. And hold on, there we go. So hopefully everyone can see the screen now. So we're just going to move along. We're going to just now get to the point of our presentation in terms of how to request an advisor from our network. We have, again, a lot of discussion regarding, how do those service delivery organizations and our shared health departments access our network, as well as those healthcare partners organizations. And that was one of our goals as well in terms of our terms of reference of how we had to kind of outline and flow chart that process. And so we have a similar flow chart, which unfortunately we're not going to share with you today, but in terms of that intake process, what we've done for staff and for organizations to access. And how we organize the network is that there are two types of support service that we will provide. The full support service, which is available to all of our shared health programs and departments, but also those service delivery organizations that I mentioned earlier and Manitoba Health. And what this entails is that our public patient and family engagement program will provide support for recruitment, readiness, volunteer, management, all of the screening and the onboarding, and the ongoing support and follow-up and evaluation of those advisors and the engagement activity. So it's pretty much the whole gamut. It's like the Cadillac version. But we also have developed a basic support service, which would be eligible to all of those full support organizations, because some of our service delivery organizations in Manitoba are very established and have an established program regarding engagement, and they may not need everything that we offer. They just need us to recruit through our network. And so there could be some of the full service support organizations that would access basic support, but it also extends to other healthcare organizations, which will include those health research-based like CHI. It could be some national organizations we've had contact us, like Health Excellence Canada. And so we would use the basic support service, which would allow them to provide us their request. We would post their engagement activity or project and share that with our patient and family advisors. And anyone who's interested from our network would contact that organization directly. So our department is not responsible for the onboarding and screening and the training and orientation. So that's the main distinction between the two. And I know we're getting close to time. So we've maybe got 5 minutes before questions. Paula, do you want to add anything before we show them the website?
Yeah, just one last point. I just want to say that by having the basic support service, we ensure that all the patient engagement opportunities are being shared with all the patient partners. There is some talk of only doing the full support network, but as I said in that discussion, some patient partners like myself want to hear about all of the engagement opportunities through the province. Shared Health doesn't have the mandate to provide assistance for organized engagement opportunities, but by having this basic support version, everyone can fill out the form and share their opportunities. It offers a lot of chances for people like myself to get involved with other groups we might not ever hear about. It also dovetails very nicely with CHI's patient and public engagement partnership. By being a member of both networks, I ought to be able to hear about all of the engagement opportunities in the province. Research projects are at CHI. Everyone else can either fill basic or full support service from Shared Health's Patient and Family Advisor Network. It's a pretty excellent way of finding out about as many things as you can. And I recommend any patient or caregiver partners who are in Manitoba consider joining up with one or other or both, depending on your interests. And anyone who wants to join work with patient partners can start filling out forms. We're ready and waiting to hear from you.
Thanks, Paula. So I'm going to now quickly share our website. So let me just pull that up. I recognize some of the names who are attending the session today, and some of you are from Manitoba and some of you are from outside of Manitoba. And so like I said, we have the two types of request forms, the full service and the basic service. So if someone is interested in becoming a patient and family advisor, they would actually go to the patient care header of our website. And on this menu, it says public patient and family engagement and the patient and family advisor network. So I'm going to click on that. Does it work? Oh yeah, there we go. Again, it's the lag. So this is our page for the patient and family advisors. There's a whole section on how to become a patient and family advisor. We have lots of questions and frequently asked questions that they can look at and review before they choose to sign up. And then there is the link to complete the form, which unfortunately I can't, when I scroll down, it disappears. But there is the form here, there we go, the online form that they would fill out, or they can print the form. So feel free, after the session to go to our website and check out what those questions and expression of interest form looks like. For staff, so if you are a staff member, and want to access and put in a request, I'm just going to go back to the website. Sorry, I'm going to have to just put it in again. And so if you're a staff, you would go to the menu bar at the top that says health providers here. You would click on health providers. And from there, once it loads, we're under integration and clinical planning. And under that, there is the engagement page. You would click on engagement. And so there's a lot of information about our department and who our service delivery organizations are. They're listed there and what we're doing and trying to accomplish together. And then you'll see these kind of blue, navy blue menu bars. And so the first one is exploring and applying for engagement and requesting advisors. So again, this is where all of the full support and the basic support request forms are. So they would click on the link and the online request form comes up, which they would fill out. Any questions about that? Or we'll take questions at the end. I think we got a couple more slides and then we'll be done. Okay, so let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation and share our last few slides before we open it up to questions. Okay, so there we go. So our next steps. So as you know, as I mentioned, we just launched the website presence in January. We are in the process of securing a database to assist with the onboarding of our advisors. So it'll make things a little bit easier in terms of that expression of interest form and tracking their steps within our network. We're also working with our communications department to promote the network, both internally and externally, to increase the number of requests that we get from staff, but also to grow that network and increase diversity. And you can see an image of Paula there that our communications department has taken of her. She's one of the patient and family advisors that's being highlighted as we try to increase younger people joining our network. And we also are trying to increase Indigenous people. So our other advisor that's being highlighted is Jason, who is an Indigenous member from the Northern community of Manitoba. We're also in the process of establishing a permanent ongoing advisory council to the network. So those two working groups have fulfilled their mandate in helping with the processes. And now we're looking at something ongoing that will provide input as we grow the network. And we're also in the process of creating some of those resources. So all of those orientation training topics that were brainstormed by the working groups, we're looking at developing them and creating an advisor handbook. So I think now I'll turn it over to Colleen. She'll just do a recap of some of the provincial projects we're working on.
Yeah, sure. So just to let you know sort of a little bit more about some of the other work that we're doing and in the province. There's work underway to disrupt racism in healthcare, and I'm supporting that work with a focus on engagement of patients, families, staff, community and health partners, and leadership. So it's a lot of engagement. It's a system-wide change. And so the scope of engagement is as broad as the system and community. The goals of the work are to create safer healthcare environments for patients, families, staff, physicians, volunteers, and learners, and to improve health outcomes for patients who are Indigenous, Black, and racialized. And we are working as collaboratively, just like this network was developed, with many health system partners, including the service delivery organizations, different levels of government, and health and community partners. In terms of capital projects, Susie and I have been very involved in ensuring that patients and committee members have a voice in capital projects planning. These are projects happening outside of Winnipeg, renovating sites, hospital sites to enhance services, and some brand new hospital builds, like in Portage-la-Prairie and Nipawin, for example. And so we work with the project teams to design engagement, recruit participants, and facilitate the session. So that's been really interesting work for us. Right now, there's a lot of focus on planning for the provincial clinical teams. And so Susie and I are working with them to look at ways to, and we'll be engaging our network. And I think they're keen to, they're very excited about this to provide patient perspectives into these 8 provincial clinical teams to support their annual planning processes. We also help with projects that sort of are in their fold. So there's just lots of work going on in terms of that, and lots of opportunities for patient advisors. And I just want to give a shout out because there's a lot of patient advisors on the call at this presentation. So thank you all so much, and thanks to Susie and Paula for the for speaking today about the whole process. And yeah, if you want to reach out, here's some contact information. Please do. And we'll, be happy to help you with whatever your, if you have questions around engagement and how to, even just how do you start? So when that's where we start where, in terms of where you're at. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and we've got lots of folks ready to help. So thanks everybody.
Trish, do you want to put up the last poll that we have? There we go. So hopefully everyone participating can answer this last question. I see myself using Shared Health's Patient and Family Advisor Network to recruit patient and family advisors for my project. Excellent. So 70% have said yes. That's great. We're eager to work with you. So please do contact us, or if you may not use our network but have questions about our presentation, like Colleen said, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
Any questions, Trish, in the chat, or anybody have a question they want to ask us?
Yeah, I know we're a bit past the hour, so anybody who has to leave, we will share the recording to this, but we can stay on for a little bit to answer questions as much as your
Mhm.
team is available. We did have a question in the chat. Let me just find it here. Yeah, Mel, I think, was asking what software are you using for the database?
Good question. We are probably going to be going with Better Impact. It's a volunteer management software program. We've been looking at a couple of different things because we were exploring also software to help with engagement tools. But there isn't any software that we found that does both, that helps with the onboarding steps of an advisor, as well as does surveys and polls and all of those engagement tools. So for our purpose right now to grow the network, we're looking at a volunteer management software program, and it's called Better Impact. Any other questions? I apologize that we've gone over time and have not allowed time for questions, but please reach out to Colleen, myself, or Paula. We're eager to help others learn, if they're, in the beginning stages of developing a network like we are. We're thankful for all of those other health organizations and health authorities across Canada who have shared their information with us so that we can create ours. So we're definitely willing to reciprocate and help.
And I appreciated CHI and our team being part of this process as well. Your team did a fantastic job of bringing folks together. I was curious for myself, like what were some of the biggest challenges you faced and how you navigated kind of being that liaison between the working groups?
And that was difficult because, when it came to, let's say, compensation, that was a hot topic that we discussed. And there was a big split between even the working groups in terms of some people saying that they felt that that they should be compensated, and other people that said they felt that this was a volunteer role, right? So you had the swing of both of them, and it was my job to be as impartial as possible to share that back to shared health leadership and executives, say this is what we're hearing, this is what the trend is, and so to put all the facts out. Obviously, that wasn't a decision that myself or the working groups was making, but I had to be impartial in terms of presenting everything that was shared with me.
I will say
Paula, do
that,
you want to add? Yeah.
yes, one thing that did come up, and I believe I was mentioned in the professional group, but I know it was definitely mentioned in the patient caregiver one, was the idea that if we're paid, well, then we won't, it's not out of our altruisticness, and it's not as good, and we're only doing it because we don't, because we want to get paid. And this whole idea that if we are compensated for our time and our effort, that our now all will be is money hungry, we're just trying to sell out, like. And I feel like that's an extremely unfair position to put us in, especially given the fact that many patients are not at all rich. We're barely making it in a lot of cases. And then we're expected to do things like come into a panel with everyone else being paid, and we're the only one who isn't. And we're the only one who's telling the most detailed personal things about our lives. It's not fair. And the idea that, well, if it's for money, it's not as good, or all we'll care about is money. It puts us in a very unfair position to have to argue, no, we're worth it. We have, but it's quite unfair to have to defend our worth to people who are already being very well paid, or at least better paid than us, given.
Yeah. What I found in the research that I had done, that was only one health authority in Canada that had a policy and were paying their patient and family advisors. They call them partners, Saskatchewan. And so that is something that we'll hopefully work towards. It's something that we need to work with government on. So it's a really bigger issue, but we got to start somewhere.
Definitely. And one thing was that I asked and I wasn't able to get an answer for. I don't think you guys, I think I asked Trish this too, actually, was Do you know what kind of statistics there are for patient engagement in Saskatchewan versus others? Because someone suggested, well, if it's all for pay, then they won't use us, or they'll only have one person occasionally. So I would like to know quite a bit about if the frequency and depth of opportunities is the same in Saskatchewan as elsewhere.
It's a good question. I know when I spoke with them, they actually use patient partners. That's their terminology, because they actually are partners in the work that they're doing. And so in terms of how many and how, the frequency of those patient and family members being involved, I don't know for sure, and I don't know how that compares to other organizations. We would need someone to do a research project on that and go into that detail. But yeah, it would be interesting to know.
Seriously, that would really be excellent.
That was another one of my thoughts as I was listening to your presentation, is whether there are any plans, at least on the health system side, to evaluate the network, or like how you will measure success going forward.
And that is one of the things that we'll look at as that advisory council is formed. That'll be one of their, hopefully, goals. It's one of the draft items on the terms of reference that we'll be sharing once that committee is put together, is to look at evaluating the network, right? And what are the things that we want to evaluate? And so hopefully that'll be one of the things.
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge we run into in research as well, and in a lot of spaces where we do engagement, is making sure we're looking at, how do we evaluate this? How do we share what we're doing? How do we examine the success, and what does that mean to research? What does that mean to health services? What does that mean to partners, right?
Yeah.
Amanda just commented that compensation actually shows that patient perspective is valued. It can be seen as exploitation otherwise, and it has a link to it. And I completely agree. It would be very easy to exploit us, because, and we're honestly, if you were very unethical, it would be very easy to manipulate us into doing this for free, frankly, because so many people like myself are there because we've had medical issues and we want change. We need change, and we're happy to do it. We want to help others. So it's very easy to get us to do a huge amount of work without any payment whatsoever. It's extremely easy to exploit us if you want to, quite honestly. We're basically begging for this opportunity. Oh, it's not from paper, but the mental model to view patients differently. Yes, I completely agree. And I do find that, like, I was part of the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies Patient and Community Advisory Committee, and we were paid the same amount as all of the other professionals, like the doctors, lawyers, everyone that's involved with CADF. And I think for the first time, it was like, wow, I actually am a professional. And even though I've been working with the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority for 2 years at that point, and quite comfortable in my role there, very willing to speak up and everything. But then to actually be paid on the same level as these people with more alphabets after their letter, after their name, and I really do. It was the first time we were like, we are experts. We have expertise that's important enough that all of the professionals are on the same level. We are seen as professionals. That, and going back to actually that little point I made about the name tags, like Winnipeg Regional Health Authority gave us little name tags with, and it was like, we're actually here professionally. This is a symbol of professionalism. It's not just a sticker with, hi, my name is Paula.